All right, let's do this.
Welcome first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. Today we will discuss the intersection between race and sports, mental health, leadership, equality, social injustice, and white privilege. So grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. Hey everyone, welcome to the Sports Deli Podcast's inaugural episode. We are joined today by some incredible people, including Dr. Bob Baldwin, Dr. Jason Ovetsky, and my three co-hosts today, Dr. J, Coach K, and Wendell Wallace from Wendell's World and Sports. Today we will talk about the intersection between race and sports, mental health, leadership, equality, white privilege, and systemic racism. All right, Dr. Bob, man, so glad that you could join us today in this inaugural episode of the Sports Deli Podcast. So why don't you bat lead off for us and talk about your thoughts about the pandemic and give us some perspective on where we're at and, you know, what we can expect going forward.
Yeah, Mike. Hey, well, thanks a lot. Really appreciate being part of your inaugural podcast, and congratulations on this project and pilot program, and hope it all goes well for you guys. I think, the basic thing I think really needs to be, it has to be done through kind of public health, planning. I think, doing a lot of testing obviously is huge. And, being able to isolate the virus immediately when somebody contracts it and identifying those asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic patients or people prior to performing any sports, I think is critical, so that, you don't have asymptomatic transmissions and just a huge outbreak on some teams. So, I mean, you have to have access to testing and have to have frequent testing, and then, of course, you have to do all your contact tracing after that, to make sure that you don't just continue to have, an outbreak. So I think if people can, show up negative, and I think competing in sports is great. I think all levels of sports should be able to return despite not having a vaccine and despite not having a really effective therapeutic at this point. Just if you have good, access to testing and then contact tracing afterwards.
Dr. Baldwin,
Gordon, John.
A question for you. With athletics, will the athletes have to be tested more than a normal because of the amount of contact they'd be having between practice and the collegiate games? Do they have to be tested?
Yeah, I believe so. I think at minimum, several times a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, perhaps. Just to make sure that, you're catching it as early as you can, and you're not allowing them to compete in multiple games before the next time they turn positive. So.
And another question, how much does one of these tests cost on average?
That's a good question. I'm not even aware. I mean, I know the MLB has, I believe they have a contract with a Utah lab, and, they got a lot of money to throw around. So I'm sure they've, it's the same one that does all their other testing, and I'm sure they're willing to pay a lot of money to have access to this testing protocol that they're putting forth. And so, I think I have no idea how much it's going to cost, but I'm sure it's going to cost them quite a bit.
I got from one of my peers last night a link to the High School Federation in Mississippi, who's put out a fairly lengthy document about their high school return, quote unquote. And it was quite a long read, and the kinds of protocols I think they're outlining and they expect, at least in the initial phase of this, is going to be a load, especially for high school coaches who are already, not really paid for the hours they're putting in. But I can't fathom being at my gym and taking the temperature of 56 kids that come in for tryouts.
Absolutely. That sounds unbelievable. I don't know how they're going to be able to do that.
And I guess my other question or my real question would be, like, how long? I mean, at what point do we say, this has been, is it herd immunity? Is it a vaccine? Is it, when do we say, it's quote unquote okay now to resume? Because the talk I've heard now is that non-contact sports may get an earlier start. Swimming, even though they're out of season, the sports that don't have any contact might be earlier to get a blessing than the sports like basketball, football, wrestling, things like that.
Oh, I think that's completely accurate. I think the team sports are going to be much more challenging, especially the heavy contact team sports like basketball and football. They're extremely challenged by this virus. And, I think these protocols are going to have to be in place until we have a vaccine. And, hopefully by the first of the year, that should be a reality.
Do you have any other thoughts that you want to share with us? We know that you have to get back to work, and we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Well, I think the other thing, college has a real difficult situation, because it seems like college football and college basketball are supporting all the other sports programs at these colleges. And if they can't have fans and they can't generate the money that they're used to generating, how are all these other sports going to be able to, be ongoing throughout the year? I think that's going to be a huge challenge at the college level. Well, I don't know what you guys think about that, but
there's an equity issue, right? There's an equity issue. It's already been broached because, I heard Fred Hoiberg at Nebraska say he wants his kids back, the 1st of June, and they're going to let football and basketball go back. And then you're going to have to explain to the volleyball program why they can't go back.
Exactly. Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Well, we appreciate your time, Doc, and we'll probably have you back on again in the coming weeks. And stay safe, and thanks for everything that you're doing.
Okay, I really appreciate it. Thanks for what you guys are doing too. Have a good day.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Doc. All right, let's introduce our co-hosts today. Let's first bring in Dr. J, Dr. Jonathan Wexler. What high school did you go to again, John?
Bethesda Chevy Chase.
Yes,
BCC.
BCC. That's right.
Right on East-West Highway for all you people listening in from the greater
nobody cares.
BC area.
And then went to Kentucky. And then he transferred to Goucher College, and we were roommates my first year there. He was the furthest thing from a neat freak. And what were you going to say, Gordon?
Weren't you runner-up in the Rick Pitino look-alike contest?
Look and sound-alike contest. I won a $50 gift certificate to Kroger's, which I went to. True story.
Oh, man, that's classic. And fast forward, John got his master's degree from the University of South Carolina, and he is now the vice president of enrollment management at Rensselaer Polytechnic in upstate New York, and sports junkie, photographic memory, and so glad that John's here with us. He's the one that actually came up with the original name of the Sports Deli, and it resonated with both Gordon and I right from the beginning. So thanks, John, for that. And, John makes sports interesting in a way that I've never experienced before. And the thing that I learned quickly about John also, as his late father was a lawyer for the federal government. John loves politics maybe as much, if not more, than sports. And he treats politics the same way that he does sports and makes it so interesting. And he's really the reason why I became much more interested in politics. And next we have Gordon Kaplan, Coach K, my college coach. He used to work for the Orlando Magic. He's had stints in Seattle, Washington as a high school coach at a couple of different high schools. And he's also the owner of Inner Athlete and Team Yoga.
Well, since you plugged the business, Inner Athlete was the way it started, but Team Yoga was the way it finished. So
there you go.
So that's
right.
Its presence on the web, and that's the registered business. And not that credentials are that important for this, or really important at all, but you kind of left out my clinic time with Converse.
There we go. Sorry about that. Right, Wendell, you should have reminded me of that.
You probably didn't even read my bio.
I left that up to John. He was supposed to fill in the blanks there. Way to go, John. Way to throw
He
me under
probably
the
didn't
bus,
read
buddy.
my bio.
I'm sure he read Wendell's.
It was a quick read.
All right. Well, John, anything else that you want to add to your background?
Good to be with you guys. Good to talk sports, and let's get into it.
All right. Sounds good. And then myself, Mike Hootner, I'm your host, and I've delved into a number of things, and professional basketball skills trainer. And I also do a number of other things, coach at a local community college, and I've coached college basketball, men and women, for nearly 25 years. And I also teach a little bit of yoga, and I'm a life coach. So it's great to be here with everybody. We hope you enjoy the banter and John's sense of humor and Gordon's perspective, and we'll have a couple more guests on for you today. We really appreciate Dr. Bob being on with us. So in no particular order, well, first let's salute our troops and during this Memorial Day weekend, and all those that have perished, and those families that are still with us, and thanks to everyone for their service. So do you guys have anything that you're interested in starting out with in terms of topics? Because the first thing that I was just going to talk about what was going on this weekend was the Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson golf charity event, which I think will be great for television. It'll be Tiger and Peyton Manning versus Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of side wagers going on there. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to watching that. And
I heard Tom Brady wasn't going to make it yet. He was holding out.
Right.
Nice.
And so in that same vein, there's been a number of other things that have gone on the last couple of weeks. If you want to comment on any of these things. But soccer gave it a whirl. I talked about that a little bit earlier, how they were very successful in isolating everybody in every facet leading up to the soccer event. And they call it a Geisterspiel in German. Sorry, I'm not well versed in German, but it's called a ghost game. And so, we're going to tie this into Dr. Novetsky in a little while, but I think once the new normal kicks in terms of no fans, even though the financial ramifications will be huge, like in baseball, I read where it's $640,000 per game that they're going to be losing without fans. But what are your guys' thoughts on what Dr. Bob talked about as it relates to the MMA starting things back out, or Rory McIlroy's charity event that was last weekend, or NASCAR, which probably doesn't need as many fans as some of the other sports. But what are your thoughts on this kind of situation with no fans and, something like this weekend to sort of boost people's spirits, as there's sort of a global depression right now going on?
I think you can do it with things like tennis and golf, but I think it's going to really lose its mojo when you get into sports like basketball. And I just don't think baseball working out. I think the amount of testing and everything you're asking these players to do, the revenue that's being lost. And I mean, baseball, it's dying as it is with people watching it. Then you add the component of no fans in the stands. I just don't see it.
What do you think of the NBA?
I think they should. I think if it wasn't for the TV money, they would scrap it and wait till Christmas, at earliest Christmas of Christmas of this year to start the next season. The only reason they're going to play the playoffs is they need the revenue, because the whole NBA television package is back end loaded. They have to play the playoffs for the money. Otherwise, they have to give it back in credits. So like next year, they'd be playing on TV for free.
Maybe there'll be a reduction in salaries.
Yeah. Do you remember the Patrick Ewing quote when he was head of the Players?
Oh God, you had to bring up Patrick
Yes.
Ewing.
Here we go.
God bless America.
Patrick Ewing's
My
favorite
man's
quote.
got-
He goes, "We may make a lot of money, but please remember, we spend a lot of money."
Yeah.
That nothing gets to the fans' heart as that quote.
And Patrick Ewing's in our thoughts tonight also, as he just was diagnosed with COVID today. So hopefully he gets better real quick.
I mean,
Yeah.
the NBA wasn't particularly swift on the uptake.
No.
I mean, you guys know that right as the D3 NCAAs started, I booked a flight into Baltimore to go to Johns Hopkins to watch the first 2 rounds. And that was the 6th or 7th of March. And the Sunday night before the game, around 11:45 p.m., I got a text from somebody telling me that the games were not going to have spectators, and I thought it was a joke. And when I was done thinking it was a joke, I thought it was ridiculous. And now as I look back, they seem to be one of the few prudent leaders who understood kind of what was happening. I won't mention all the NBA stuff that went on in terms of how poorly they kind of handled it. So, are they going to handle this better than that? Do they have the acumen to handle this kind of thing? I mean,
but I think it's more than that, though. I think there's a discipline in Germany, and that's why their numbers are down as a country, and other places that have more discipline. And I think Americans, in particular with professional sports, they're just going to get fed up and say, I'm over it. There's some people that are going to not say that, and they're just going to say, well, I'm not going to be isolated. My families need to be here. They're going to go out and get toothpaste, right. and they're going to contract it because they didn't have the discipline to sit in their rooms and for the greater good, because they wanted to go out and selfishly, as crazy as that sounds, to go get toothpaste or deodorant.
Well, it's not just professional sports, Mike. I don't think. I think generally speaking, when the German government makes a decision for the well-being of the citizens, a large portion of those citizens probably accept the fact it's for their betterment. Whereas here, I think there's a much stronger divide in terms of whether the government actions are for or against what it is people prize.
No doubt. Absolutely. I agree. Let's bring in one of our experts for tonight's inaugural podcast, Dr. Jason Ovetsky. He is a longtime friend of mine and played Division I baseball, started at Southern Miss. I believe Brett Favre was there when he was there. And he'll tell you a little bit about his story and how he ended up at the University of Detroit, another Division I program, and went on to get his PhD and is now running the Champion Mindset Group out of Detroit, Michigan. And he'll talk a little bit about his beast mentality and his eye of the tiger, and where he got that from. And we're really glad that Jason could join us. He's been on a number of podcasts, and he has some of his own things going on and has dealt with some very, very high-level professionals down to kids and everything in between. And so, Jason, welcome. Glad you're here with us tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So my first question is, I mentioned it earlier about sort of a global depression. I remember going on a walk the other day, and, I have sort of a hearty personality, so I try and take everything that's going on and find the positive in it, and not everyone can necessarily do that. But still, that doesn't mean you're not going to have a bad day or a tough moment or start crying out of nowhere, especially when something like this peels back the layers very quickly, emotionally, with all of us. And so I was just curious. So anyways, the moment was, I literally started crying because I was sad for everybody else. I'm lucky, we're all lucky. Most of us are making it. And, Wendell was in a tough situation. He'll be on a little later. He wasn't getting unemployment at first, and he was scared to death. His mom's in a care facility, and he couldn't teach, and he started to Uber, and he's putting his life at risk, and he's sort of on the front line. Everyone's got sort of a story to tell, and it's out of sight, out of mind, and a lot of us don't really know the depths of what people are going through. So I want you to just touch a little bit about that sort of a global consciousness, and then sort of as it relates to sports, more specifically, how this is complicating things, because we have enough challenges from a sports psychology standpoint, trying to reach our full potential. And now you add this to it, and there's just some things that you don't even realize are going to affect you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge onion we got to unpeel here, and there's going to be a lot of crying along the way. I think globally what you're talking about, Mike, is it's really more, to me, an anxiety versus a depression, because what we have is the perfect storm of fear and uncertainty. We're very scared because at first we didn't know what this was going to be. We didn't know how big it was going to get. We didn't know how contagious this thing was. And we still don't know 100%. And then all the uncertainty of health, your income, your job, keeping everything that's dear to you, worried about family members, as you said, people in care facilities. It's very scary right now. So I think what we're having is a global anxiety problem. Certainly depression too, but I think the anxiety, the nerves are what's really tearing at the fabric of people's hearts right now, because we just don't know what's going to happen next. And, when related to sports, I talk to my athletes a lot about focusing on things we can control, and not to waste so much time on uncontrollables, things that we don't have a lot of say in. And this pandemic is the ultimate uncontrollable for everybody. There's so many things that we have no say in when it comes to this. We're being told what to do, and for good reason, a lot of that, in my opinion, but we just don't know what's next. And I think that's what's really tearing at everybody, whether you're an everyday person or an athlete. That compounds it even a little bit more.
So obviously everybody's personality is a little bit different. How do you, somebody tries your suggestions and then the next day they shut down and say, I can't do this. Like, you have to try something for 3 weeks, right? Or a month for it to really kick in.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to your character. I mean, when we talk about results-oriented goals and things like that, like if you had a goal of getting through this, if you had a goal of winning a championship, and all you guys know that, there's a process to that. But what really drives the process is a person's character. And so, like you mentioned, it comes down to discipline. And I know how big you are on being disciplined, and, whether you're disciplined or you're trustworthy, things of that nature, that's what's really going to make things happen. It's going to drive that process. It's going to get you to the results you're looking for. So when people give up quickly on something, that it is a lack of discipline or a lack of motivation. And I'm a big believer that motivation comes from within. You shouldn't have to have a coach or anybody motivate you. I think you got to find why you play or why you live, and what you love about living and playing, and go to that as much as possible to keep that drive going.
Doc, what's the role of nature and nurture in terms of character?
Oh my goodness. I think it's a little of both, just like that question's been answered for years. It's a little cliche, it's a mix, but I believe, and just like I believe about mental toughness, that you come standard with something. It may not be the best, but it can be developed and cultivated. And that's what I hang my hat on, because I've seen it. I've been working with athletes for a long time, as all of you guys have. And I know you've seen different people come to the court or the field, and they got a little mental toughness, or they got a little character, but with the right nurturing of that, the character that they bring, it can be really developed and cultivated into something special, if it's supported in the right way.
Doc, with what's going on now, how hard is it when you're dealing with the athletes of the unknown? It's like a hurricane. We were talking, with some friends, a Hurricane Katrina, horrible thing.
Sure.
But it came and it's over, and you see what you assess, you get an insurance if it's a house, you decide if you're going to stay in town or move based on what's going on. This, the unknown. Even the experts don't know how long it's going to go on for. And, you could be training with an athlete who doesn't know if they're going to have a season.
That's right. And that's what happened. I mean, I was in the middle of when all this went down in Michigan here, it was the spring sports tryout season was about to start. And so all these kids, especially the seniors, are looking forward to their final season. And it's an important year for a lot of them to get recruited, and on and on and on. And all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from under So we talked a lot about this is a delay, not a denial. And so even though it might be your last year, it's still not maybe the end of your whole sports career. So we got to find a way. And I think the only way we can get through this, just like anything, is day by day. It's focusing on the things we can control today and look for what we can do to take advantage of this opportunity. And that's how you need to look at it. So we've been talking to athletes about, hey, well, here's an opportunity to get maybe some different kind of training in, whether it's physical or mental. Let's focus on that. And let's set small goals each day. How can you be a better athlete or a better person than you woke up this morning by focusing on what you can control?
So I was going to ask you about that,
Yeah,
if
sure.
I can interject, because I know you talked in some of your other podcasts about brushing your teeth the right way and dental flossing the right way, and doing every little thing that sounds stupid, but it really gets you into a routine because we have to do those things. Well, we don't have to, but you have to do those things. And then that just gets you into a better set of habits every day, and it just build off of that.
And what you're talking about, Mike, is a concept I work on a lot, is identity, is who are you? And do you know who you are? And it's a huge question I ask my athletes all the time. Like, what are your standards? What are your core covenants? What's your brand? When we think of a brand like a car, you think Porsche or you think Ford. They each have an identity. Which one do you want to be associated with? And so when I ask my players, I say, when people hear your name, what do you want them to think? Do you want them to think Porsche or do you want them to think Ford? Are you amazing or are you not? Or are you a champion or are you not? And so what, Mike, you're alluding to is it's a habit of having that mindset of a champion all the time. And I ask them, when you sit down to tie your shoes, do you tie your shoes like a champion would? When you walk around, is your body language like a champion? You always have to have that filter of what would a champion do in this situation? And if you're asking yourself those really wise questions all the time, you have no choice but to grow in a positive way, in a positive direction to a champion. But if you don't pay attention to what you're paying attention to, and you let your body language droop, and you make really bad decisions, and you talk a lot of negative talk, you're going to certainly go the other way. And I'm not saying you have to be positive, and that gets and that word gets a bad rap, and I understand why, because people say, well, we just have to be positive through all this pandemic stuff or any kind of negative thing. And it's really difficult to be positive when all this is going on around you. And so what we're trying to teach our athletes is to be neutral instead of positive or negative, because we know negative thinking works, and especially when you say things out loud, it makes it 10 times worse. But it's really difficult to stay positive for a long time with a lot of negative content around you. But when you say, let's be neutral, and what I mean by that is, let's just focus on what needs to be done. Let's focus on what we can do. Let's focus what we need to do. And if we start accomplishing those things and focus on those things, we're going to have positive outcomes from being neutral and focusing on the task at hand.
And what we tell our kids, we tell them that how you do anything is how you do everything.
That's right.
And the devil is in the details, and those things are really important, because the reality is that if you're not able to attend to the small things, there is no way you can attend to the big things. And so it's like, if you want to equate it to what happens for us in practice, it's a fundamental rep. And the more reps we can get on shoe tying or teeth brushing or hair combing or how we store gear when we come into the gym, the more we're building a habit for kids to translate the habit, not to tying their shoes, because who cares ultimately, but to how they're integrating with their teammates.
That's right. It's the details. It's the little things. I mean, you guys know, you go back to John Wooden, maybe taught kids how to put their shoes and socks on the right way. So clearly are important. Those attention to details turns into a character skill of focusing on what's important and paying attention to those little things, which of course adds up to the big things that we're all after.
So I don't have substantial evidence about suicide rates, but I know there has been a spike. And so, it's not easy for a lot of people. They don't have these coping skills. And a lot of
also in consumption of alcohol, from what I hear.
And child abuse.
And probably spousal abuse too. Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So what are the top couple of pieces of advice that you could give we're talking sports here, but obviously it's bigger than that right now. Sometimes you have to push the pause button and, maybe broaden your parameters a little bit. But what are the couple of things that people could do on a base level that, will just sort of help them if they're getting basic needs, assuming that they could, emotionally or mentally, handle this a little bit better?
I think an important thing that is to have routines, is to set some quality routines each day, to set some small goals for yourself every day and really stay focused on accomplishing those things. So routines help us feel more comfortable. Routines in a game, a pre-shot routine, a pre-game routine, gets you into the present moment and helps you stay focused and blocks out distractions. And the same thing is true in daily life. So if we can wake up, at the same time every day, get a workout in, meditate, review your goals for the day, maybe journal a little bit. If you want to watch a little news, that's fine. Just don't consume too much negative information. Take care of your work, whatever you do, get your work done and so on. Make sure you're preparing your good meals. I mean, all those nice little routines can, next thing you know, the day's over and you accomplish something. And progress equals happiness. So if we're making progress towards something, we're going to feel a lot better about that as well.
John?
I'm sorry, John. The only thing I would add to that is stay connected too. Talk to friends and family, whether it's virtually or on the phone, or if you can go out in your neighborhood and walk around and see people, that's also going to keep us a little healthier.
Doc, I had a question in regards to, you're in Detroit area.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of your athletes don't have big houses. They don't have a private gym. Maybe in some cases, maybe some of them do. But how have you had to change their routine when they were used to going to the gym or used to going to the batting cage or used to going to an athletic facility regularly and had a routine there? And now they've got to get into a routine in a much more confined area. Maybe they got brothers, sisters, parents they can't make a lot of noise at certain times and that type of thing. And how much does socioeconomics play into this?
It's huge. I mean, I'm in the northern suburbs of Detroit. So, I mean, we do have some, it's interesting, right. In Bloomfield Hills, we do have people that have home gyms and stuff like that. But in the city and the surrounding areas, you're right. And so we've had to be really creative. And it's unfortunate. Some people took advantage of the stay-at-home order, and there were people out playing, basketball in the parks and too many people out there. So they ended up having to take the rims down, which is really bad, because if people were smart about it, you could have had, hey, let me go out there and shoot around for a half hour every day, then you get next and so on. And we could have had people been able to go outside and work out and do things. So we've had to get real creative. Thankfully, recently, some of the facilities have been opening up with certain precautions. I have a lot of hockey players that I work with. So they've had, 5 guys in the dressing room, 6 to 10 feet apart. Nobody touches each other's equipment, water bottles, all that kind of stuff. And they take, a half hour between sets, and they spray down the locker rooms and all that kind of stuff. So at first it was really difficult for sure. So we had to be creative at the home as much as we could, or go outside and go to the parks. But recently things are starting to loosen up. In fact, in Ohio, they're going to start travel, fed baseball this weekend. So with all kinds of precautions, hand sanitizers in a dugout, nobody can be within a few feet of each other. Umpires and coaches have to wear masks and so on. So I'm really curious how this is going to go. I hope nobody gets sick. But these kids are just itching to get out and play. I mean, it's hard to be cooped up and can't play Fortnite all the time.
So Ohio has offered itself up as the Petri dish?
It looks like it. I heard Indiana too, possibly. Yeah. And some of the Michigan teams are going down to play.
Well, I guess we'll know in 2 weeks, won't we?
Yes, we will.
Well, Jay, we really appreciate it and what you're doing for the greater good in so many different ways. And is there anything else that you want to add before we let you go?
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Let me know if you need anything else. Happy to answer any questions. My work is really about sport and performance psychology coaching. So, this whole thing is, had to open up my eyes and learn a lot more about the clinical side. I'm licensed as a clinical guy, but my coaching has been my focus on the mental side of the game. So it's been, again, I look at it as a positive. It was as an opportunity for me to learn a lot of new information.
Can we hold you for one more question before we let you go?
Yeah, of course.
On the website, it says something, and I'm paraphrasing, it says something along the lines like, too much emphasis is spent on the physical, which is really a great statement. I suppose it hits most people in a puzzling way. I get it. I know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say a little bit about your point of view and position on the other elements that are required?
Absolutely. And remember, I was a Division I athlete. I know how important physical training is. But my background, I was a pretty, and Hoot knows, I was a highly recruited pitcher out of our area. But when I got to college, everything changed. I got crushed my redshirt freshman year when I got back to U of D by way of Southern Miss. And I didn't know how to handle pressure, because in high school, it was easy. When you're tall and left-handed and throw pretty hard, it came pretty easy. But when everybody in the lineup is a Division I athlete, 1 through 9, that's a whole new ball game. And so I went 2-8 as a starting pitcher my redshirt freshman year at my school, and went and set the school record for losses in a single season. I didn't lose 8. Who knows? I didn't lose 8 games in high school combined.
No, sir.
As a starting pitcher. So I was looking around for help. I was talking to coaches, I was talking to my teammates, like, what the hell is going on here? What am I missing? Do I need to throw harder? Do I need to add a new pitch? They're like, no, with you, it's all mental.
What year?
This is 1989,
Right.
my redshirt freshman year.
You couldn't even have the dialogue with somebody, right?
Nobody's talking about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no YouTube. There's no Google. Right. And so somebody handed me the book, The Mental Game of Baseball by Harvey Dorfman, kind of one of the pioneers in mental skills training for baseball. And at first I didn't want to read it because that was admitting something was wrong. Remember, I was an athlete, you got to be tough. And so finally I relented and I read the book, and everything Harvey was talking about in this book made sense to me. I learned how to better mentally prepare, how to visualize, how to use appropriate and productive self-talk, how to create routines, to understand how pressure affects us and things like that, the mind-body connection there. So I started working on it slowly, and things started to click over my summer league season. And then I came back that next year and I earned my spot back in my rotation, and I went 9-3. And I didn't change anything physically at all. I didn't throw it 1 mile per hour harder. I didn't get much stronger. I just was a year older and a lot smarter mentally. So I knew right then and there, there's something to this stuff we call the mental game. And I went on to learn more, obviously, about it, and got my degrees in psychology. So the reason I say there's too much emphasis on the physical part is because I ask this question all the time, and maybe you guys can answer it. What percent at a high level of playing sports is mental versus physical? What's the common answer you hear there?
90-10.
Yeah,
4-1. Yeah, 4-1.
Yeah, mental over physical, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
then I ask the questions, and I'll do this in large seminars from anywhere from one team to 1,000 people. And I'll say, well, how many hours a week do you physically train for your sport? If you're an athlete in the heat of your season, depending on how old they are, 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours a week. If you're a pro, it's 40 hours a week, whatever it is. And then I'll say, okay, how many hours a week have you done mental skills training?
And it's 0.
And it's quiet. And I say, well, wait a minute. You guys just told me this game is at least half mental. And all the light bulbs go off. And I say, okay, well, let's get down to business. So now we're on the same page. And so that's why I put that little bit provocative statement on my website. And some people get upset. They're like, I'll say things like talent is overrated at a high level, because when you get to a high level, everybody's talented. Right. And that's what happened to me. Like in high school, it was the top 3 or 4 guys in the lineup that were any good. And once you got through those guys, it was strikeout, pop up. And when I got to college, it was 1 through 9 were all those top 3 hitters of every school. And then when you get to the pro level, it's the top 3 of those guys. And so
I have to stop you for a second. I can see John's face. It's ticking in there. He's thinking, yeah, that's what I was thinking about my career. Come on, Wex. You're so mentally tough that first year, man.
Oh, really?
Now Wex might be the exception to Dr. Novetsky's website, because he needs the physical training.
Oh, man. Well, Jay, we appreciate you learning from what your experiences were in high school and in college in particular, and paying it forward in so many ways, and helping so many people try and follow in your footsteps, or just at least have a good experience if high school is where it ends, because that's our job, is to make sure that those kids have a great experience and what they're involved in, so they can have that spill over into their daily lives when they get older.
For sure. Absolutely right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Take care. Everybody stay safe and be well.
Great job, Jay.
Doc.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks. All right. John, I couldn't help but wonder what you were thinking when he was talking about some of this stuff.
So is this where the program comes crashing down?
Oh, man.
That depends on what you're about to say.
I'm not saying anything.
That's a first.
Yeah.
Well, Mike,
yeah, go ahead.
I thought he brought great stuff to the cast.
He's good.
I enjoyed listening to him.
Yeah, me too. I've heard him before in some podcasts, but I haven't talked to him on this level in a long time. We've known each other since I went to his.
I guess it's interesting because you guys know that I'm not calling myself on the forefront of anything, but I tried to get into sort of that field, and people get into it in a different. Like he went a very traditional route. He got a psychology degree that validates the work, and I went in a yoga direction, but really the work is very similar. The pitch is very similar, just the nuts and bolts of it are probably very different.
Sure.
Definitely. And you definitely have to follow your compass. Let's go back a little bit to what ended last Sunday. No pun intended, the last dance. And you see some subsequent things coming out about that after the fact. I don't know, Gordon, have you watched any of the episodes?
Not a single one.
Not a single one.
And
you
proud of it.
Proud of it, right. Wendell has.
Good work prep there, Gordon. Nice job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why, because I know it will aggravate all of you. I saw Jordan play. He was an amazing player. I really enjoyed what he did for the game. I think he did a lot of things for youth sports that were great. He's a horrible human being. And so post-career, I mean, if you listen to his Hall of Fame speech, it is all about one thing, and the one thing is him. And it's the Hall of Fame speech. I mean, you can look at every NBA Hall of Fame inductee, and not one guy went on a narcissistic rant like he did. So as far as I'm concerned, I have no interest in knowing what, his documentary is about. I saw him play. I enjoyed it. And then, the behind the scenes stuff, I was there. I was in the league, and that the sheen of the NBA leaves you very quickly when you're behind the scenes. When you're sitting in the locker room and players have their particular shorts to go to the restroom, and players come in to pick up their checks. They're on the IR, but they're completely healthy. The sheen of the NBA goes very quickly.
And what Gordon's referring to is his time with the Orlando Magic when he was one of the video coordinators there. John, what are your thoughts? And Wendell, if you want to chime in before we formally introduce you, feel free. But I thought some of it was interesting. There was some plot twists, that were talked about, during it, even though the emphasis was on MJ and the Bulls. But I think your strengths are your weaknesses. And that's certainly the case with MJ. What allowed him to have an edge and get to that high level was also what made a lot of people not like him.
Did you just say your strengths are your weaknesses?
Usually what allows you to have those strengths will also cause you to, have those same things will be your weaknesses.
So like gambling?
Gambling or, your intense personality,
Well, I mean, let's be candid. He had tremendous control over what was put onto those 10 episodes.
I mean, would that work now?
And he had to sign off on all of it. Do you know when this is a good stat for you guys. Do you know when he finally greenlit this thing to be able to be shown?
3 weeks ago?
The day of LeBron James' victory parade in Cleveland. True story. That's when he picked up the phone and told his people, let's go with it. And he got $4 million, I think, the dollar amount. I don't think
so. It's not really a documentary. It's a Michael Jordan.
He is concerned that his legacy, right? He's concerned that his legacy is being forgotten by the next generation. So he just guaranteed for the rest of his life that he will be thought of as the greatest player.
Additional evidence in the narcissistic bag, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Let's bring in Wendell Wallace, a podcast expert, Wendell's World in Sports. And you can go online and find his stuff. He's very passionate about sports and somebody that we've known for a long time, and has some great opinions about a varying number of topics, and I'm sure including this one. Wendell's from Maryland, and I know he's dying to share his opinion. And played college basketball with myself a long time ago, and is currently a teacher in Nevada. And we appreciate him being on as another one of our final guests in our inaugural episode here tonight. Welcome, Wendell.
Was that play that you guys had together, was that before the invention of fire or after?
I don't remember. Did I play basketball? I don't even remember that. But you're gonna look at me. Yes, actually, did play basketball a long time ago.
I do. You had a little jump shot back in the day.
Just a little bit, yeah, just a little bit, if I can remember.
So I know you have some. I know you have some thoughts.
I'll be sending Wex a scouting report on Wendell right after the cast.
I shoot,
left.
And I shoot some more. But I will say this about Jordan. Now, me growing up, being a big Magic Johnson fan, being a big Patrick Ewing fan and everything, I never was one of those guys who like glossed over Jordan and thought he was the greatest thing ever. I was one of the last who finally got off the bandwagon as far as him not being the greatest. In fact, I didn't finally come to that.
That's putting it mildly. You used to go in on him.
I always, Magic was my guy growing up. The reason why I was such a basketball fan, Magic, Len Baez, Bernard King.
Magic passed.
All those guys. So it was like, I just can't jump ship so easily. I'm Jordan the greatest, no doubt about it. So my main thing was, when Jordan was doing all this stuff, I would always say, but Magic has more championships. So when he beat Utah for the 6th championship, it was like, I got nothing. I finally had to come to the realization, that Michael Jordan was the greatest of all time, or at least one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, but Wendell, do you think those Bulls teams could have beaten the 80s Lakers, the 80s Celtics, or the 80s Sixers? I don't.
No way.
Maybe. I don't know.
And as a follow-up, are you a big Robert Horry fan? because listen. If your argument is going to be rings, then you're going to have to talk about Robert Horry, because that guy has got rings.
When you talk about someone,
he's not, but he's got rings.
Yeah, but
when you talk about Bill Russell, when there were 6 teams in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. I'll never say this guy's greater than that guy. Look, you got Wilt, you got Bill Russell, Oscar, Jerry West. All these guys sit at the table in terms of who's the greatest of all time. And I'll let those guys decide amongst themselves who's the greatest. I mean, when it comes to those guys and my acumen in basketball, I think those guys would have a better idea of who's the greatest basketball player of all time. So I'll let those guys decide. They're all great. I mean, would you rather have Selma Hayek or Halle Berry in their prime? It doesn't matter. You're going to be great with either one. But the thing with Jordan is that I would give Jordan a little bit of this in terms of the human being that he was. And that, yeah, he was a bully and he was arrogant and he was all those things. But I'm thinking to myself when I say, man, this guy probably was put on a pedestal and given everything that he wanted by the time he was like 19, 20 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it's easy from my perspective to sit there and be like, man, what a jerk, what a clown, what all this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking to myself, if I was given that same opportunity to be in that position, like Michael
You'd also be a dick?
I don't know. I have no idea. I know I wouldn't be the person that I am right now. And I know my perspective would be completely different if
you think that's how he was under Dean Smith?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Wendell.
Yeah.
If you decided today, right now, I don't know how old you are, and I don't want to know, but if you decided right now, you're 6?
Not as old as you.
That's just my mentality.
That's right. If you decided right now that you wanted to lose 3 pounds, could you do it?
What?
Yeah, if you internally decided you wanted to lose 3 pounds, could you do it?
Yes.
Well, so can Jordan. So whatever dick he was at 19, whatever forces affected his direction, he's still an adult man who can make choices and change on his own.
Yeah, but if I could look in the mirror and say that I'm fat, so losing 3 pounds.
No, just a random.
If you've been conditioned for the last 30-something years that what you're doing is correct and what you're doing is great, then your mindset is, why do I need to change? Again, if he has been, when he made that shot in the championship game, his life changed forever. And I don't know how any of us would be if by the time we were 21 years old, basically everything that we did, we could get away with. Every decision that we made, it was met with, yeah, that's absolutely right. You're the greatest. You're this, you're that. I mean, as I mentioned before on my podcast, the only way I would like to be Michael Jordan is I would like to have his money. I would like to have the influence in people's lives. And I would like to have the availability of women that he had.
You wouldn't know what to do with those things. You got his money. We would be flying down to Vegas and bailing your ass out of jail.
I would love to find out. I'd be one of those guys who would have like 8 kids.
You would have become Dennis Rodman, not Michael Jordan.
Yeah. You're never going to hear
green hair.
Guys who, you're never going to hear me say anything about athletes who have like 8 different kids by 6 different women, because I would be that guy if I was given the ability that Michael Jordan had back in my early 20s or mid 20s or late 20s or early 30s. But so late 30s, early 40s, whatever, keep going, mid 50s. But so it's like I couldn't have all of that he had in terms of the adulation. If you watch the show, which I thought it was going to be about the last season, 1997-98, but instead, like you said, Gordon, it was nothing more than a Michael Jordan dick suck fest. It was essentially like the
Can you say that?
stardom and the superstardom that he had. I couldn't deal with that nonsense. I couldn't deal with people rushing up on me. I couldn't deal with people trying to touch me as I walked by. I couldn't deal with people putting a microphone in my face. I think,
generally speaking, it sort of points to the sort of the, what am I going to call it? The false luster. Like, everybody really talks about how great Dean Smith was, but nobody really talks about his alcohol problem or his chronic smoking or, really what he was as a person. That never comes out. And granted, I'm a Coach Knight guy who is the exact opposite end of the spectrum. So that matters to me, in terms of what you see is what you get. But this is the kind of thing, Jordan's got that kind of thing. It's like, he can do no wrong. He's made of Teflon. Nothing sticks to him. I just never went into that because it never felt like it was the keeping it real that everybody talks about.
Yeah, and you're right. I always felt the relationship between LeBron and Jordan was always about threat. You know how he's always open to Kobe, and at his memorial, whatever, he was crying and talking about Kobe was my little brother and all this kind of stuff. And I think it was a matter of Jordan saying, well, I knew no matter what Kobe did, he was never going to be better than me. That the consensus was, I'm the guy. And I think Kobe, near the end of his career, when he stopped trying to be Michael Jordan, he became a much more easier guy. I think he became a much more happier guy because he just finally made the decision that, look, I can't win this game in terms of me trying to be better than Jordan, which I wanted to be the first 8, 9, 10 years of my career. But I think with LeBron is a serious threat. So the competitor in Jordan knows that physically he can't get out there and try to stop this train to try to, kind of slow this talk about Jordan is not as good as LeBron or whatever like that. If you saw all these documentaries or the documentary about him, he was always talking about, well, yeah, I heard Karl Malone got the MVP and that pissed me off, so I had to shut him up. George Karl didn't say anything to me when we were at dinner, so my motivation was to annihilate the guy. So with Jordan, it must burn at him that these folks are up here talking about LeBron this, LeBron that, and he is where Michael Jordan used to be, and Jordan can't do anything about it. And I think that's why there's been this sort of distance between LeBron and MJ, because I think LeBron has a healthy fear or respect for the greatness of LeBron and what he can do moving forward.
We better get John involved before he falls asleep.
Well, I mean, first of all, Jordan's agent, David Falk, changed the game because if you were in the documentary, he mentioned that he treated him like a tennis player.
Yeah.
and singulared him out, as opposed to, that's why he wouldn't go to Converse and be one of 5. He went to Nike and became one of 1. They had to name the shoe after him. He had to get more money. And once the league bought into that, then that changed how that whole sport was looked upon, for the athletes following that. But I mean, if you look at it, I mean, we can get into this, but LeBron has not had the big moments, as many big moments as Michael has had. And LeBron and Michael did it with one team. He didn't have to go to the Miami Heat and then jump back. But it was an interesting thing. And which is typical Jordan, everybody probably except Steve Kerr didn't like how they came off in the documentary.
Dennis Rodman,
Dennis Rodman doesn't care. I mean, Dennis Rodman doesn't care. But Harvey, right? Horace Grant wasn't happy. Scottie Pippen wasn't happy. Isaiah Thomas wasn't happy. Bill Laimbeer didn't care.
It was all about how great Michael Jordan was, and that's fine. I mean, you're going to get a certain generation of people who will never give anybody their props when it comes to the NBA. I always said that Jordan has been the greatest and the worst thing for basketball moving forward as far as NBA superstars is concerned. He's great because of everything that he provided, the foundation for these guys to do what they do. But it's been a curse because, I mean, we really can't, well, not everybody, but a lot of people can't really, accept Kobe or accept LeBron or really appreciate these guys because the Jordan losers feel so threatened every time those guys do something that they have to shout and scream and talk about, well, if Jordan was here, he'd be doing this. I remember after the documentary was over, you go on Twitter and it's like, yeah, if Jordan was playing today, he scored at least 30 points a game. But you got to remember, he's 55 years old. Ha, ha, ha. And, of course, all the folks on the ESPN and everybody talking about, well, this is the reason why Jordan was the greatest and everything because of his personality and his refuse to lose and pushing everybody and fear and intimidation and bullying. Is like, well, I'm sorry, didn't Tim Duncan win 5 championships also? Or Jordan won 6, but didn't Tim Duncan win 5 championships? And the last time I saw him, I mean, I wasn't in the locker room, but I don't think Tim Duncan had the personality of leading by bullying or belittling or, putting fear into people's hearts. So I whatever. I mean,
well, there's actually a significant difference, I think, in persona between the two players. And I don't get into that, who's the best part anyway, because it's a chase your tail kind of argument. There's no solution. It never gets solved. It goes around and around year after year after year after year, decade after decade. But I think you look at Jordan, he had a couple of things that LeBron doesn't have. First of all, he's a more of a finesse player. He's very different in terms of how he played the game. And if that stuff isn't compelling, his effect on youth basketball is far more significant, because what you had happen with Jordan is you had young kids going out on the playground trying to fly, trying to soar, trying to spin, put the ball between their legs, do all kinds of things. Really,
Dunk.
The dunk contest is the dunk contest because of Michael Jordan.
Sure, but if you look at it, it's isolated. It happens over the span of an hour, whereas Jordan's career happens over the span of decades. And so, I don't think kids are out doing something particularly LeBron-ish. I know kids think that when they're shooting from 35 feet, they're Steph Curry or Klay Thompson. So there's that kind of emulation, but they're not going to be in that conversation, I don't think.
No.
Also, you have to take a look. I mean, Magic Johnson came into the league as a 6'9" point guard. Now all of a sudden, guys who are 6'8" and over, all of a sudden now wanted to play point guard. So I mean, people have always said that the beginning of the lack of big men in the league started when Magic Johnson came into the league as a 6'9" point guard, and Larry Bird came in as a 6'9" shooting guard. And all of a sudden, as Kareem has said, nobody wanted to post up and learn back to the basket moves. They all wanted to dribble and shoot. And then the advent of the three-point shot. Now everybody, not everybody, but now people who are 6'9", 6'10", the power forward position was one where you would set picks and rebound and do the dirty work.
Oh, you were right, everybody. Everybody, that's what you're right, everybody. I mean, if you watch kids walk into a gym, the first shot they take is from 22 feet.
Right. And Steph Curry, like you mentioned before, just did nothing but push it back a little bit. Trae Young isn't Trae Young as if Steph Curry doesn't come around. You see some of these guys.
Or Damian Lillard. I mean, these guys all have the physical abilities, the skills to shoot deep on the court.
But also one thing in the documentary that's interesting, especially in the 90s and the way the game is played today, is that these guys have to kind of shoot you have to have more range, only because the guys that are playing today are so much bigger, so much more athletic. And the fact, so because of that, the way the game was played in the 90s, there were so many, as I was watching these highlights or some of these games with Jordan when he was playing Utah and the Knicks and everything, so many wide open, like 15 to 17 footers. That doesn't happen in the NBA today. It just doesn't happen. So a lot of the
call that mid-range, and it's dead in that league.
Because there's not too many opportunities for a mid-range shot. These guys are too big. The court is not.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna just say that it's become unpopular. It's passé now to have a mid-range game. Yep, it's passé. And then you say, well, we don't really you can't really make a metrics evaluation because nobody's doing it. You can't say, it's effective or not effective because there's no mid-range game in the league to look at.
I give you one: the San Antonio Spurs, DeMar DeRozan and Lamar.
Yeah, I'm generally speaking of the 30 teams or however many teams are in the league, I would say 28 of them have no mid-range.
Right.
All right,
Get me out of here,
gentlemen. Great first show. I thought it went really well.
I can't wait to listen to you guys do your show. Boy, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and we have to bleep out that one thing that you said, but that's all good, bro.
Don't worry, man. This is podcasting. You can curse. Don't worry.
Internet, you can say anything. Howard Stern does it all the time.
So Wendell, how many shows do you do a week? What's the situation on that?
I do 2 unless someone keeps badgering me and bothering me.
So in the middle of a pandemic, the best you can give the American people is 2 shows?
2 shows a week.
I mean, what else you got going on?
They're winded.
You're in your house.
Yeah, by the
You're
way,
unemployed. You do 2 shows. Why aren't we doing a show a day?
Oh, no, I'm Ubering. I wake up, I Uber, I come back home, I call my mom, I take a nap, and then I go.
Who's Ubering in Vegas right now? 3 people? I mean, who's Ubering in Vegas? Who are you picking up? I mean, if
Chad. Who's picking up Chad?
I go to the strip. I mean, people be picked up from Walmart. They need to be picked up from the grocery store.
I mean, who's getting Chad beating his beer?
And by the way, I'm not getting any unemployment. You breaking news on your podcast about me getting unemployment? I haven't got unemployment yet. I'm still waiting for my $600 from the federal government.
Well, we hope you get it, Wendell.
We'll put a call right in there. I'm sure Trump will return the call.
Anybody want to talk about number 45? I got some thoughts on that.
No, I do not.
I think we're all of the same opinion on that one.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, great job tonight. We're going to finish up with a little bit of music.
Will Jim Harbaugh be a guest next week?
Oh, God. Anybody have any last
I have some questions about the University of Detroit baseball program.
Steve Fisher. You want Steve Fisher on the show?
We'll give it a whirl.
Antoine Jobert.
He's Antoine Jobert.
Gary Grant and Michael Talley. I think Wendell picked Michael Talley last night from Kroger.
Perry Watson going to apply to be your
Perry Watson
over at Prayas or whatever. Is he?
Wow.
Bill McClellan, is he going to also be looking
Bill McClellan. Oh, God. Our old assistant coach at Mesa College.
Where is Gary Grant right now?
Oh, God.
Antoine Jobert.
Antoine Jobert.
Fade to black, fellas. Great job.
Are you playing like Ricky Martin?
Yeah, why are you playing La Vida Loca? Where did Gordon go?
Gordon left.
Jeez.
Oh, man, what a historic and epic first episode of the Sports Deli Podcast. Thanks, fellas. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Boy, that was phenomenal. Great job and much love to everyone. Remember, Black Lives Matter. Stop the bullying. Stop the Asian hate. Contact your local and state politicians for any inequalities, for any individual or any group that's being marginalized. Also, everyone, we want to raise awareness for those individuals that are currently imprisoned for non-violent offenses, in particular those with long-term sentences that are disproportionate in particular to those people in the Black and brown community. And I want to send a shout out to 40tons.co. 40 Tons is a socially conscious cannabis brand, and they're a social enterprise using the regulated cannabis industry to fight injustice, in particular for cannabis prisoners. So check them out again at 40, the number 4, the number 0, tons, plural, 40tons.co, because what they're doing in the cannabis space and being a socially conscious company is truly incredible, and they have my full support. And also wanted to remind all of you, if you're having a tough time, you can always call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that number is 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, and they are available 24/7, 365 days a year. You can also always check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at Mike Hootner. Thanks again to our amazing sponsors, Breaking Tea, Sport RX, PSK Collective, City Lokes, and Moolah Kicks, which you can see right here up on the screen. You can search them online at breakingtea.com, sportrx.com, pskcollective.com, moolahkicks.com, and citylokes.com. And if you'd like to support us at the Sports Deli, we'd love to have you either make a one-time donation or feel free to make a donation monthly, either 99 cents a month, $4.99 a month, or $9.99 a month. If you have questions about that, send me an email again to thesportsdeli@gmail.com, and I will send you the link on how you can do that. You can also find it at the bottom of every podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Link at the bottom to support the show. Please check out our website at thesportsdelipodcast.com. Make sure that we continue the conversations with regards to 3 strikes and you're out and mandatory minimums, especially people that are in jail for non-violent offenses. So those things need to change. And remember, gents and ladies, please remember to do your monthly self-breast examinations. And remember, guys, this afflicts about 1,500 men annually, with about a third of those resulting in death. So we want to make sure that we do our monthly self-breast examinations, both men and women. And guys, remember to do your self-testicular examinations every month as well. Until next time, remember, it takes a village. For Dr. J and Coach K, I'm Hootie Hoot. This has been a production of Hootie Hoot Productions. Thank you for joining us in the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. Remember, it takes a village. Much love, everybody.